When I was younger, I worked for my lake community during the summer season for as long as I could remember. The jobs ranged from dishwasher, maintenance worker, and boat tender. My last and longest one was beach security. The lake had a small beach with a building that had a game room, a deck overlooking the beach, a restaurant, a small hotel, and a lobby for guests of the hotel and restaurant. I was assigned to check in guests of the beach and make sure that they were members in good standing who paid their community dues and to enforce the rules of the whole area. This took place during the summer and fall of 2011. I graduated college and I promised myself that this would be the last year I would work for the community. I was tired of the drama and I was ready to find a real job. To make more money that year, I also took the position of doing night duty as beach security. For that, I would monitor the property for 3 more hours after the game room and restaurant closed at 11 p.m., and I would make sure nobody was trespassing on the property. I would mostly walk the property and then stay in the lobby area, watch TV, and play on my phone until my shift was over. I would also have to ask people to leave or call the community security for assistance. I should mention I was an unarmed security guard, and I didn't own anything for self-defense at the time. One night in July, I was watching TV with the sliding glass door behind me that led to the deck. The show that I was watching went to a commercial break, and the screen went black for a second. When that happened, I saw on the reflection of the TV screen somebody standing on the deck looking into the door and looking at me. I immediately jolted up and turned to the figure and just stared at him. The guy was about 5'8", wearing a dirty black hoodie with a white Adidas logo on it, navy blue basketball shorts, and white sneakers. With his hood up, I couldn't really make out his face, but I could tell that he was a white male with bright red dyed hair that was underneath his hood, and he seemed a bit younger than me at the time. He was just standing there, swaying slightly, and he had his hands in his pockets. He was staring at me, but also it looked like he was looking right through me. It took me a second to collect myself, and then I walked to the glass door and slid it open. I told him, "I'm sorry, but the beach and deck are closed for the night, and I have to ask you to leave the property and come back when we open tomorrow in the morning." He had a bit of a pause before he said anything, until finally all he said was, "When is that?" He was very monotone and seemed tired but jittery. I told him the lake and beach would open back up at 8 o'clock in the morning. Then the hooded guy said, "Okay, can I come in and use the bathroom?" At this point, I felt something much more off about this guy. I've dealt with drunks and people being super high, but this guy seemed to be on something else, and I didn't want any part of it. Once again, I told him I was sorry, but everything was closed for the night. He seemed to get a bit annoyed by that, but his body language barely changed. He said, "Fine, I guess I'll go somewhere else to take a poop." Then he walked off. I made it a point to follow him off the deck and watch him walk away to make sure that he left. Instead of heading up the road, he veered off into the woods. He was out of my sight, but I could hear him dragging his feet through the brush and sticks. After that, I walked back into the lobby and locked the door behind me and called the dispatch, reported the incident, and asked them to keep an eye out for the guy. The end of my shift came and I locked everything up, armed the security system, and left. I started to drive out of the beach area, and as soon as I started to turn left, a balloon full of this red liquid stuff flew from the woods and slammed against my passenger window. I got startled and floored it out of there. I wasn't going to get out and see what happened there when I only lived 5 minutes from the beach. I got home and checked out the damage. My passenger door was covered in red paintball paint. The impact was enough to dent my door. I called it in and asked security to keep their eyes out and check the area for the guy. The next day, I was told that they didn't see anybody there, but got reports that that same thing had happened to other residents' cars or houses. I was angry, but also unnerved that it happened to me in the first place. Fast forward, and time had passed and it was fall now. The beach closed for the season, but they still needed a night guard to make sure that no one was vandalizing the property. It was the week of Halloween, and it was also my last night. I got a job working at a much better job, and this was the last day of my 2-week notice. I also went to a Halloween party earlier that evening, and went all out as Jason Voorhees with a machete from Walmart as well. I was wrapping up for the night, and I was just sitting outside of my car, talking to my friend on the phone, trying to get together to hang out with some people. As I was talking, I could hear some leaves rustling and twigs snapping in the woods behind the dumpster. I told my friend that I had to go, and I hung up. That was my dumb horror movie moment, as I walked slightly closer to where the noise was coming from. It was dark, but slightly lit from the parking lot's lights. As I was looking, from behind the dumpster came the same guy I saw in July. His hood was down, and I could see his hair was longer, with his natural brown hair roots longer than the red dye that was left. He began to walk up fast to me, growling, and his face was plastered with rage. He had a black iron pipe in his right hand, and he was swinging it a bit when he came at me. He covered a lot of ground quickly. I ran to my car and opened my back passenger's door I was facing. I grabbed the machete I brought for the party, and I raised it over my head and stood my ground. I don't remember what I said to him. I was filled with so much adrenaline, but I know I cursed a lot. He seemed to stop and stood there for a bit. After I yelled and shook the machete a bit, he simply turned around and went back into the woods where he came from. As soon as he cleared the dumpster, I got out of there. I was going way too fast for the windy roads my community had. I called not only security but the police as well. By the time they got there, he was nowhere to be seen. Years later, I moved away from my community, and I haven't heard anything new about the man or anything related to the incident. I now carry a knife, and I still have that same machete in my car, just in case. I grew up in a small town in Indiana near Fort Wayne. Born and raised there, nothing ever really happened there. Most days were the same. It was early fall, and the weather was cool, not too cold though. My uncle and I decided to go for a bike ride around dusk. He lived a few blocks over and would come by now and then to ride the trails with me. Our town has lots of them, paths that wind through the woods really all over the whole town. We rode towards the high school. There's a lake next to it, kind of tucked behind some houses and trees. We weren't really in a hurry, just riding and talking. We took a turn behind the library. There's a sidewalk there that goes down towards the water. It's a calm spot, and at night you can see the moon reflect off the lake if the sky is clear. That night it was full, and sitting right above the trees across the water. We stopped near a lamppost. My uncle pointed towards the moon and told me to take a picture. I pulled out my phone, trying to line it up just right. That's when we heard it. It wasn't a normal sound, not an animal or a person. It was like a gurgling growl, deep and wrong. It stopped me in my tracks. Then I heard my uncle yell. He's 6'3" and not the kind of man who scares easily, but he screamed loud enough to make my chest tighten. I turned towards him and saw him staring past me towards the trees behind the library where the noise had come from. We both stood still in shock as we watched a gray mist just drifting between the trees. But it didn't move like smoke. It moved like it had a purpose. Suddenly, it shot out towards the lake very fast and dove into the water where it disappeared. I turned back to my uncle. He nodded before I could say anything, and we took off. We didn't talk for the rest of the ride. We just pedaled hard until we got back to my house. I was so curious on what we had seen. I found out that the library used to be a hospital a long time ago, back in the 1800s when the town was just starting. Also, there was a drowning which happened in that lake centuries ago, around the same time when the hospital would have been in use. I figure what we saw that night must have been associated with those things somehow. My uncle, who never believed in ghosts or anything like that, won't go near that part of town anymore. He says he knows what he saw, and I believe him because I saw it too. Last summer, my friend invited me and my 2 cousins to spend the night on a small island in the middle of a lake for his birthday. We got there around 1 or 2 in the afternoon. The weather was decent, warm and a little breezy. We set up our tents and walked around the island a bit. It wasn't very big, just a couple of trees, some thick brush, and a small patch around the edge. As we settled in, we went tubing for a bit and just hung out. Around 5 p.m. we decided to go fishing. We didn't catch anything, and we soon noticed that the sky was starting to darken. A storm was rolling in fast, and we had to head back to shore. The wind had picked up, and the trees were swaying hard by the time we made it back. We got a fire going just before the rain hit and cooked some supper. Around 20 minutes after we ate, the storm fully hit. We were in the tent for a few hours, had some snacks, and played a few card games. At midnight, all of us were awake still as we had trouble falling asleep in the tent. I said something like, "Let's go fishing for a bit," since the storm was over, and everybody agreed, so we walked down to the boat. We fished for about a half an hour and didn't get any bites. The lake was calm again. We just sat there talking for a while, and the time passed without us really noticing. It must have been around 2:30 a.m. or so when we decided to head back to the tent. But when we got there, none of us could fall asleep still. At around 3 a.m., I said something like, "The boat was more comfortable than this tent," and the others agreed, so we decided to go and sleep on the boat. We were walking back down the path towards the water. When we got closer to the boat, I suddenly saw someone, a figure shaped like a man, walking towards our boat from the other side of the island. I froze and whispered, "Stop." Everybody stopped. We just stood there frozen, watching the man. He walked up and checked out our boat for a little while. We had no idea how this man got on the island. He could have canoed in silently, or maybe he missed a boat approaching the island when we were out fishing. The weirdest part was after he examined our boat for a few seconds, he slid into the water next to it and hid behind the dock, it appeared. It was hard to tell if he was sitting there right near our boat in the water or if he had swum away, but we weren't taking any chances. We turned around and went back to the tent without saying a word. Nobody slept for the rest of the night, and we stayed alert waiting for any sounds or signs of the strange man. In the morning, the first thing we did was go and check the boat. Nothing was missing. The fishing poles were messed up, tangled in weird ways, but that was the only sign that somebody had been there. We had set them carefully after the last time we fished that night, so we knew they weren't like that before. We searched the whole island and didn't see anyone. It's small enough that if somebody had come ashore or was hiding, we most likely would have seen them unless they hid in the water again or something. We even checked around under the boat and dock, and nobody was around. Everyone saw the man and all described the same thing. A dark figure walking onto our boat and then slipping into the water next to it to hide. It's been over a year now, and I still think about it. I keep wondering what would have happened if we got onto the boat just a little earlier. Maybe nothing, or maybe something bad. We still don't know who or what we saw there, but we've never gone back to that island, and I don't think we ever will. This happened a year ago, and I was just 16 years old. I'm a girl, and my mom told me that she and my oldest brother were staying at our lake house for the weekend, and suggested that I go and bring a few friends down. I invited my friend, who I will call Sarah, and told her to invite a few other people as well. Having a good mix of boys and girls, so everybody was excited. They arrived late Friday night, so on Saturday we spent the day on the boat. Everything was fine until we decided to go fishing late that night. We were so excited that we forgot the net that we needed to keep the fish in. I was bummed since the walk back to the house was about 18 minutes, all for a small net. It also included a large, steep hill just before the marina that we were stationed behind. We needed it though, so I told them I'd be back shortly. John, another one of my friends, insisted that I didn't go alone. He was very protective, but I don't think he believed there was any real danger. Sarah, seeing John's persistence, offered to go with me instead. At this point, I just wanted to fish, so I agreed to let her go with me and began walking up to the dock. Like I said before, the large hill led to the dock, which split to either the left or the right once you've reached the marina. If you go left, it splits again, and one strip leads to the back of the marina where we were. This area is lit by a single light that was covered in bugs. It was an ideal fishing place, especially since there was hardly anyone around that night. When we reached the side of the marina, there was a tall, bulky man. He must have been middle-aged, maybe a little older. Like I would do for anyone down there, I flashed him a smile, followed by a friendly hello. It was darker in this area, so I didn't get a good look at his face. However, I did see his meaningless blank expression drop into a look as if I had just insulted him. He didn't even respond, which I immediately found unsettling. Everyone down there was usually friendly enough to greet any stranger, even if they weren't in a good mood. Sarah and I are best friends, so we could tell what the other one was thinking by a simple glance at each other. We continued to walk, but I began to question why the man was walking that way in the first place. It was only our friends back there, and he didn't have a fishing pole or anything in hand. Just as we passed him, I began to hear footsteps following behind us. I turned to my left to face Sarah, and saw the man out of the corner of my eye. He was following us. Sarah noticed too, and we began to pick up the pace, but he stayed right on our heels. Anyone else on the dock would have thought that we were walking with this man, when in reality we were trying to escape him. It would have been a straight shot up the hill into the neighborhood, had there not been a truck parked right in front of the dock. Out of many years I've been down there, I never saw anyone park like that. In fact, only golf carts parked this far down the hill, never a truck. It was at an angle, so we were walking straight towards the driver's door, which was wide open. The truck was still running, but no one was in the driver's seat. At this point, we were both done with this man, and began to make plans in our heads to escape. Sarah and I both knew that we couldn't outfight this man, but we could outrun him. I suggested we wait until we reached the hill closer to the truck, trying to act like we weren't scared, and also so if he was fast, he would have less time to catch us before we passed his truck. The light behind us made our shadows stretch out into the water as we neared the hill. The shadow of the man began to grow as well, much larger than either of ours. We reached the hill after what felt like minutes, and took off as fast as we could, racing past the truck by going down into the ditch a little bit and then up the hill. We didn't look behind ourselves until reaching the top of the hill. The truck was flying backwards up the hill right towards us. The man had already gotten into his truck and was pursuing us. Sarah didn't know the area and froze, trying to decide where to run. Without even cluing her in, I pulled her down the boat ramp and into the wooded area behind the houses. We didn't turn on our phones for light, in fear that it would attract his attention if he was following from the road. We popped out on a road before my house when there was no sign of any cars nearby. Then we booked it all the way back and found my brother getting ready to walk down to the dock. We explained everything as we walked back, terrified that something could have happened to our friends. My brother was 22 and had no fear of the man we explained. He even suggested that the guy turned around because he forgot something. But we dismissed the idea when we saw the same truck sitting at the top of the hill, waiting. My brother shined his flashlight at the truck as we walked past, but the headlights were blinding us. As we walked past, all I could see was a figure just sitting there. We got back to our friends, and they never even saw the man. John kicked himself for not going with us, and I can only imagine if I had gone alone. That man would have had the perfect chance to shove me into the truck blocking the path, and I wouldn't have stood a chance. I can't remember his face, but I'll never forget the way his shadow towered over us on the water. This is a very brief but unsettling experience I had about 5 years ago. My girlfriend at the time had a cottage we would visit every chance we got. It was a 2-hour drive up north, and it ended with us turning down the old familiar dirt road that led to her cottage. The land of this dirt road was split onto 3 properties. The dirt road split off near the main entrance leading to their first neighbor's cottage. The remaining 2, my girlfriend's place and then her other neighbor's place, were further down. The end of the dirt road turned into her cottage and another path off theirs leading to the final cottage. We were out by the fork in the road with a fire going at around midnight, drinking and chatting. This being cottage country, we were surrounded by total darkness, our only light source being the fire that we had started. Footsteps started to sound up from the road in the darkness, turning our laughter to silence. Out of the black came a man in black pants and a black hoodie with the hood up. The only distinguishable feature was that he was a white male. This startled us as we knew that no one was up at either of the neighbors' cottages this weekend. My girlfriend's parents and the other neighbors had been friends for some 20-odd years and communicated when they or somebody else would be up there. The man proceeded through our sight, illuminated by firelight, up towards the neighbor's cottage, ignoring our greetings and pleasantries. He carried on and disappeared into the darkness. This was not a paranormal encounter. No ghost was haunting us. This was a very real guy who we had never seen before, walking down a pitch-black road and passing through our property. He left footprints and we could hear his walking. It was all very real. There's no town in either direction for miles, so where did he come from? We returned to our drinks and chatter before slowly making our way to bed. Nothing else happened that night. No attempted break-ins, no creeping around our cottage, silence through the night. The next morning, groggy and sporting a massive headache, I headed up to the neighbor's cottage to check for any signs of the guy who we had seen. Some light impressions on the ground of footprints heading up to the cottage, and that was it. The rest of the weekend was great, and then we headed home. The drive home gave us time to mull over what had happened. Who was that guy, and where was he going? Where had he come from, and why did he ignore us? I never experienced anything odd up there after that again.